Lesson 1-2, Rational Numbers, Fractions, Decimals, and Percents. In this lesson, we're going to learn what a rational number is, and then we're going to convert between fractions, decimals, and percents. Rational numbers are numbers that can be written as fractions. Notice that it has the word ratio in rational, and fractions are ratios. Decimals that are rational numbers will always be a terminating or repeating decimal. Terminating means it terminates, it ends. Repeating means the decimal or a series of decimals or digits behind the decimal repeat over and over and over in the same pattern forever. So any decimal that either ends or repeats is a rational number. Example 1, we're going to write each fraction as a decimal. Round to the hundredths place if necessary. 3/4. To go from a fraction to a decimal, we just use the fraction line as a division symbol because that's what it is. So we could say 3 divide by 4. You can do that by hand or you may use a calculator. You get 0.75. For 6/5, we say 6 divided by 5, and you get 1.2. Part C, for 7/9, we say 7 divided by 9, and it gives us a repeating decimal. Your calculator would show 0.77777 all the way across your screen until it reaches the last digit, and it'll round it up to an 8. So we could write it as 0.7 repeating, the bar over the top shows it's repeating, or since this did say to round to the hundredths place if necessary, we could have written it as 0.78 when it was rounded, just because it said we could round. Either answer would be acceptable here. Example 2, we're going to write each decimal as a fraction in simplest form. We have 0.036. Remember, a fraction has a numerator over a denominator. We can write a decimal as a fraction by writing the digits after the decimal for the numerator, and then use the place value of the last digit for the denominator. So for example, for 0.036, we take the digits after the decimal, 0.36, we could write it as 36, and then figure out the place value of the last digit. This last digit is a 6. It is the third digit after the decimal, so it's in the thousandths place. So we write it as 1,000. And now we have a fraction. We just need to simplify it. So we think of numbers that both the numerator and denominator will divide by. You might notice they're both even numbers, so you know they'll divide by 2. I noticed that they both divide by 4 as well, so I'm going to go ahead and divide them both by 4. When I do that, 36 divided by 4 is 9, and 1,000 divided by 4 is 250. And you could use a calculator to assist you there as well. And I'm finished with this, and I could look at that and see if there's anything that 9 and 250 would both divide by, but there's not, so it's in simplest form. Problem B, we have 1.28. We want to write it as a fraction again. This time we have a number in front of the decimal. So I'm going to write that number in front of the decimal, that 1, in front of my fraction. So 1 and something. So the digits after the decimal was 0.28, so 28. And the place value of the last digit, 8, was in the hundredths place. So it's 28 over 100. I'm going to go ahead and reduce 28 over 100. They'll both divide by 4. So I get 1 and 7/25. Example 3, we're going to write each decimal as a percent. To move from a decimal to a percent, we just move the decimal place 2 places right. I'm going to note that. Move 2 places right. So I'm going to take the decimal here, and I'm going to move it 2 places to the right, and we get 32%. And just a quick way to see if we're on the right track, you can think of decimals as the amount in dollars. So I could have thought of this as $0.32 written with a dollar sign. When you move to a percent, it's like the cents, 32 cents. Those have the same value. Going from a decimal to a percent works the same way. B part, we have 0.7. Once again, we're going to move our decimal 2 places to the right. But when I start doing that, when I move 1 place to the right, I run out of space. There's nothing else behind that digit that I see. But I still have to move 2 places. So I go 2 places right, and I need a placeholder. Always use 0 as a placeholder. So we have 70%. We have 3.48. Remember, we're moving our decimal 2 places to the right, 2 places right, and we get 348%. And you might think of a percent as being a number that's between 0 and 100%, but that's just dealing with going from 0 to 1 whole. So since this number was already greater than 1, we have a percent that's greater than 100%. Remember, you could think of it as dollars and cents again. This was like saying $3.48, and we know that if we were to count that out in pennies and cents, that would be 348 pennies, or 348 cents. So 348% was correct. Example 4, we're going to write each fraction as a percent. So we have the fraction 4/5. To go from a fraction to a percent, we need a middle step. We need to go to a decimal first, and then we can easily go from a decimal to a percent. So let's start by going from a fraction to a decimal. We would say 4 divided by 5, which comes out to 0.8. We'll move our decimal 2 places to the right, 1, 2, we need a placeholder, and we get 80%. The fraction 1/12, we go from a fraction to a decimal. So we'll say 1 divided by 12, and it comes out to a repeating decimal. We get 0.0833333 all the way. It would keep on going forever, so 3 repeats. And we're going to move our decimal 2 places right to get a percent, 1, 2, and we get 8.3 repeating percent. And sometimes a problem might ask you to round, and if it's a repeating decimal, you can just round to the place value that it calls for. Example 5, find the percent of each number. Part A, 13% of 60. Well, we can start by changing our percent back to a decimal. So the decimal was here behind 13 since we didn't see it, and we'll go 2 places left now. So we have 0.13. If you think of dollars and cents, you went from 13 cents to $0.13. Of is a very common keyword in math, and most of the time when you see the word of, it indicates that you're going to multiply. When we're dealing with percent of a number, you're always going to multiply the percent as a decimal times the number. So 0.13 times 60. And at this point, you can just go to a calculator, and you get 7.8, and we're finished. B part, we have 42% of 175. So if you don't see the decimal, you know it's behind the number. It's at the end after 2. And we're going to move 2 places to the left, 1, 2 to go back to a decimal, 0.42. Of means times 175. You can go to a calculator and multiply. You get 73.5. Example 6. Alan completed 23 out of his 27 passes attempted in football. Find his completion rate to the nearest thousandth. So his completion rate would be the number he completed out of his passes attempted. So 23 completed out of 27 attempted. And we can write that as a fraction, 23 out of 27. That phrase out of often indicates a fraction, a portion of a larger portion. So we want to write this as to the thousandth, which indicates a decimal. So we're going to change from a fraction to a decimal by dividing. And if you look in your calculator, it probably gave you 0.85185118. And depending on your calculator screen, it might have given you further digits out. And you would probably notice that it does have a repeating pattern, 851, 851. It's going to keep on repeating those 3 digits, 851, over and over and over. But it's not asking us to write it as a decimal with a repeated, a bar over the repeated digits. What it's asking is for it to be rounded to the nearest thousandth. So I find the digit in the thousandths place. That would be the 3rd digit after the decimal. And I use the digit to the right to either round up or stay the same. Well, 8 is greater, 5 or greater. If it's 5 or greater, it's going to round up. So we get 0.852.